plenary session. By the way, I am Jovito Carino. I am from the Department of Philosophy of the University of Santo Tomas, and we welcome everyone to this session. The lecture to be delivered today by our eminent speaker is entitled The Other and the Infinite and the Good in Me, the Path of Transdescendence. We heard him speak yesterday, but for the sake of those who were not around to listen to him in yesterday's session, we wish to introduce again Father Burggraeve. Professor Burggraeve was born in Passendale, Flanders, Belgium in 1942. He is a priest of the Salesians of Don Bosco. He obtained his licentiate in philosophy in Rome the year 1966. By 1980, he obtained his doctorate in moral theology from Leuven. He was Professor Ordinarius from 1988 to 2007, and now he is an Emeritus Professor of Theological Ethics at the Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies in Leuven, Belgium. He has taught at the faculties of Theology, Pharmacy, Philosophy, Canon Law, Medicine, Dentistry, Sexuality and Family Sciences, and courses of Fundamental Theological Ethics, Relational Ethics, Faith, Biblical Thought, and Ethics, Faith, Values, and Ethics of Emmanuel Levinas. As emeritus with an assignment, he continued to teach courses on Bible and ethics, Christian, sexual, and conjugal ethics, and an ethics of growth for difficult pastoral and educational situations at the Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies, also in Leuven, until 2010. He taught the same course as visiting professor at the International Institute for Religious and Catechetical Sciences in India. He is last but not least spiritual director at the Holy Spirit College in Leuven, where 50 to 60 international priests reside for studies in theology, philosophy, and canon law. His domains of research, interests, and specialization include the following: the ethical and religious Jewish thinking of Emmanuel Levinas, the relationship between Christian faith and ethics, sexual, relational, marital, and family ethics, and education and ethics, and guidance as well, among others. As an internationally renowned Levinas scholar, Father Burggraeve knew Levinas personally for many years, and he has published numerous books, articles, and contributions on Levinas' ethical, metaphysical, and Talmudic thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, we wish to give you again Father Burggraeve.
So, thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start with a small aperitif. A meal has to be introduced by a good aperitif. Let me quote Levinas, because we have to start with Levinas, I think. In one of the texts of the book, Alterity and Transcendence, he explains what it means for him to say good morning to the other. Dire bonjour. All encounter begins with the benediction contained in the word, in English they translate hello. But it's not so nice. You have to say bonjour, good day. In the word good day, bonjour. That good day, that all cogito, all reflection on oneself already presupposes, and that would be a first transcendence. this greeting addressed to the other man is not a communication, it's good weather today. But it's an invocation. I therefore insist on the primacy of the well-intentioned relation toward the other. Even when there may be ill will on the other's part, the attention, the receiving of the other, like his recognition, mark the priority of good in relation to evil. When I left Brussels to come to the Philippines, you are in the airport and you think of the terrorist attack, what happened there. Because you see the visible elements still there, and the warning, and you see the military there, not there before. So in that moment you think, oh my Lord, certain things can happen. And you see all these people around, and then I do what Levinas said. I say to some people I don't know, good morning. It's possible that you say good morning to the terrorist who will kill you, but you say good morning. That's a paradoxical form of transcendence. So just to keep your attention, I say again, good morning. It's the first blessing we give each other. Okay, today we progress by regressing. We go forward by going backward. Yeah. You could compare it with the idea of keren, umwertung, a kind of reversal, or better what Levinas calls in Humanism of the Other, his introduction on that book, he says, l'introduction c'est le premier c'est-à-dire. Introduction you write for a book, gathering all your materials after time, is the first c'est-à-dire. The first, that's to say. So it's a reinterpretation. Because you rethink. You are not sure that what you have said is okay. So you have to go forward by looking backward. So what I explained yesterday, the inspiration Levinas took from his mentor, mentor of Doctoralita, Jean Waal, is this distinction between transascendence, upstairs, transdescendence, downstairs. Of course, phenomenologically, in our experience, we start with what is there, what we experience, what we can see, what we can describe, what Husserl calls the naive intuition, the naive experience. It's so obvious, because we meet each other, we say hello to each other. So, and therefore the first movement yesterday I tried to explain a little bit, is this transascendence, starting with the experience of the same, going beyond itself toward the other, and to be appealed by the other to responsibility. That's the movement of transascendence. But Levinas, and that's my trial to understand the shift or the changes in the language in Levinasian thought and Levinasian writing, especially when he published first La Substitution, the article La Substitution, on substitution, who was one of the chapters he already prepared and he took to publish before. He published in Otherwise Than Being in 1974. And so I still remember when I read this, I didn't understand. It was very complex, but not only complex, it was totally different from the language of totality and infinity. And you say, what is going on here? That means it's a good article because you ask questions. But I did not find a solution till I remembered myself for my doctoral thesis in 80, presented in 80, I had prepared a chapter on the influence on the learning process of Levinas by his professor Jean Waal. And still there, but I forgot. That's very, very typical. Sometimes you have remarkable insights and you don't know that you have. And so many years afterwards, in 2003, 2004, only came back that insight. That there I had written and discovered that Jean influenced him by this dichotomy, or no, by this bipolarity, two sides of one coin. The transascendence and the transdescendence. And of course the first movement is the phenomenological movement of going beyond yourself towards the other, as we tried to describe yesterday. But Jean speaks also in the same reality, in the same discovery, in the same process you go. There is also a movement backwards. A movement not beyond yourself, but beyond yourself going into yourself. So what they call here from beyond, au-delà, to the hither side. And you find it in otherwise than being, and also in the of God who comes into mind, and more even in entre nous, and some other elements, but especially in otherwise than being, you find continuously these two words or two expressions, as if it were synonyms, the same, but it's not the same. Because on the one hand you have beyond, on the other hand you have en deçà. So you don't go forward, you go backward, or you look backward, or not your front, but your back. In fact, that's metaphorical. So, the descent into the depths of the subjectivity, not going outside the subject, but inside the subject. As Jean himself speaks, you move from the most high to the most abysmal. Or as Levinas quotes in Les Noms proper names, we transcend transcendence towards immanence. This is the intrigue of the transcendence in immanence. I hope to make clear what it means. But for me it's very important to be discussed, because I'm not always yet sure, totally sure. In philosophy I'm never sure. Never sure. It's not only a methodological doubt, it's also an existential doubt. So a person not doubting is not human. No? That this is a right interpretation. There are possibly other interpretations. Okay, but let's try to go that path of transdescendence, going to the cellar, not to the top, to the roof. Okay, so in this sense, let me explain this methodological term. I would like to call it in Levinas a methodological term, but it's not sure that it's just methodological. It's also metaphysical. It's also phenomenological and transphenomenological. So he is a phenomenologist by going beyond phenomenology, through phenomenology. So yesterday it's possible that we overlooked something important. There is not only the other, but also the same. That's totality and infinity. In totality and infinity, it seems very clear. The argument. I suggested once to a doctoral student to reverse his whole doctoral thesis and to start with his conclusions. To put it at the start of his doctoral thesis by using the argument of Levinas, the argument. Because the most important things are probably at the end. And then you show how you come to argue that argument. So, l'argument in totality and infinity. It's the same also in otherwise than being. So, and there you see the same and the other. The same is the sameness. The same is the identity. The same in otherwise than being, that's the interest, the self-interest. That's the place where the self is not only the self as self-affirmation, but as dynamics of self-affirmation, and as reduction of the other to the same. And it seems very clear that this is the one dimension of life. And the other dimension of life and is then the relationship with the other outside the self. So you have two. The same and the other. Being and otherwise than being. And I have to confess again, in all my way of interpreting Levinas, I fell in the trap to polarize, to dichotomize, to dualize Levinas. And I think it's not correct. But what is first clear, the first description of the subject, the same, identity, self-interest, process of identification and interestedness, is has to be questioned, that it has not to be transcended by something else beyond, outside the subject, but that the subject itself, or definition, or description of the self has to be questioned. And here Levinas is very Husserlian. Have the permission to introduce a little bit this problem, shortly, or this approach. So in the phenomenology of Husserl, he speaks about the phenomenological reduction because he is convinced that what we see first in our spontaneous intuition, we think it's right, that's the real reality, but that we don't see the real reality. That by turning back, retreating, hesitating, or returning on our steps, I don't know if my English is correct here, that we find the real thing, the Sache selbst. But the Sache selbst is not what is given immediately. And therefore, that hesitation I found in the same book, Alterity and Transcendence, Husserl always speaks of the blunders that deform naive vision. But naive vision is naive, and therefore she is not aware that it's naive. It's obvious, it's true, it's the evidence itself. So, but phenomenology, philosophy, is the suspicion that the obvious, the most evident, is not the right. So, to see philosophically, Levinas continues, is to see without naive blindness. But always again, we are blind. Okay. So, zu den Sachen selbst. So that we forgot something in our first description, yesterday, of this ethical relationship, describing the self and the ethical relationship of the self with the other. Let's say another element to understand better this methodological or phenomenological, transphenomenological term. Namely, Levinas links, I think, modestly, that he combines the Husserlian approach of the reduction to the Kantian search for the conditions of possibility of a phenomenon. You have a phenomenon and you describe it, but then you ask the question, it's not the first question you ask, it's the second, the later, the forgotten. But you ask, what makes possible what appears? Appears what appears. But what makes it possible so that can appear what appears? So that's the question for the conditions of possibility. So otherwise than being, it's my suggestion, conviction, but I'm not so totally sure. It's a possibility to understand, because Levinas never clarified this kind of shift. He says, before I was afraid of psychological language, and now I have not to be afraid of psychological language anymore, or to be misunderstood, but you feel that this is not the real reason. So I think there's something more at hand. And so it's what he calls, it's the process in otherwise than being of retroscendence, recurrence, récurrence in French. You go back, looking backward for the forgotten in what you already have described, or even the repressed, what you don't like to describe. So what he calls the soul of phenomenology, of ethics, and of the face of the other. The soul. Someone asked me yesterday about the spirit. Let's speak of the soul. The soul. So that means we have to dig in the depth of the same, not outside the same, but inside the same, asking whether the only and most original meaning of being can be found in the interest or conatus of the I. If you read otherwise than being, and I can assure you, my interpretation is not the final word, but I can assure you it will help you to understand better this horrible, difficult book. It's very difficult. But the difficulty means that you look for phenomenology, and you don't find so much phenomenology in it. Pieces, yes, but this kind of returning and asking a question, and what is obvious in what you describe is not obvious. And then you find that what is not obvious is not so obvious even, and you go back, and this kind of exasperation not going forward. You now, Levinas, yesterday you speak about exasperation, but it's exasperation not only going forward, but exasperation is going backward also, inside. And so looking for what is more original than what we think is the original meaning of being, to be found in the interest. Going back to the hither side of being. This means, that's very interesting, it's a very interesting consideration Levinas makes in the Dieu qui vient à l'idée, in the article on l'éveil, the awakening. This means that the evidently primordial, what is given at first sight, becomes in this new approach secondary. On closer inspection, becomes more important and primordial than what in phenomenology is primordial. I quote there the French expression, very strange but very interesting, secondarité préalable, previous secondariness. So what is more fundamental and precedes every phenomenology of what is given at first sight is more fundamental, but you only discover it afterwards. You cannot start with the previous. The order in phenomenology is to start with the phenomenology, what you describe, what you see, the naive intuition, and then going back. And then we discover what we describe first as the most important is the less important. It's not correct. Has to be corrected. Has to be redefined. So what is first, the primordial sphere, loses its priority, its privilege, its sufficiency. And then what we discover afterwards, après tout, acquires the full priority, whereby it likewise attains a foundational meaning-creating character. I think that this is going on in the second major work, in the second movement, so that you can understand why this kind of strange language, always again asking and calling into question. I will give examples. To conclude, methodologically, it's more than methodology. It's philosophy, but it's also a way of being. It's the reversal of natural order. The latter is first. This is quoting Levinas. This is not the gospel. This is quoting Levinas. The reversal of the natural, the obvious order. The latter is first. So, okay. Again, I warn you for my excitement. My excitement is not guarantee of truth. But it can help. But enthusiasm is very risky. We like the most enthusiastic professors, but probably the best are the boring ones. But I like to be enthusiastic. Yeah. Okay, so let's now reveal or try to understand, repeat the same things of yesterday in that other perspective, what I call the perspective of the other in me, not outside me, beyond me, but in me. And what I call ethical transdescendence. So, it's very simple. Yesterday we have described the experience of Levinas. Experience, namely, you have the face of the other. You meet someone in Brussels, in the airport, and you see the other, and you see this person is lost. Like, I always have the problem. As a child, I always lost my way. I always lost my way. And still my anxiety to lose my way. Therefore, I always look for guardian angels all around. Because I'm always afraid to lose my way. So I saw there someone losing her way. So you go there, and this is the experience of the face of the other in distress, in suffering. And you say, what are we looking for? No? And you are appealed, in fact, by the face of the other to take care of the other in a very simple way. Picking up the luggage or something, it's very simple. Because Levinas is speaking on simple, very ordinary things. That's not extraordinary. And so you are appealed. But this second move is saying, when you are appealed, appealed, you have to presuppose, sorry for the word, appealability. Levinas, in one of his interviews, speaks, he cuts the word responsabilité. Responsabilité. Ability refers to what is pre-given. Responsibility not as the act of taking care of the other, but being responsible. You find yourself in the situation, in the condition, in befindlichkeit, sorry, that I use the Heideggerian term, the befindlichkeit. I find myself in the situation, the fatality, the condition to be responsible. So to be appealed presupposes that you can be appealed, that we are appealable. So now we have this exasperation method I will use. So appealability implies I want to go beyond every kind of intellectualist systematism. Oh yeah, that's okay. Oh yeah. Oh. I did not see because otherwise I would have hidden. Okay, that's the minutes I have to take care. So we are appealable, that means we are affectable, not be deduced by reason. We are touchable. So emotion here, like Jean-Val says, precedes, is deeper than reason. And it's a source of reason. So affectability implies sensibility. You see the words responsibility, affectability. I'm not only affected, but I am affectable. Yeah? If I speak too much the same, say it. But I want to be sure that we understand. Because it's not obvious. And it's very important for the right interpretation, I think, of the second Levinas. So touchability, touchable. I will tell at the end the story of the angels. It's a very nice story, I can assure you. So this is what he means by incarnation. Not incarnation in the active sense. I incarnate myself now in and through my body to express. You see, the word expression, he corrects the word expression. Because expression could mean I am the one using means to express myself through the body. So then the consciousness, is first. The cogito still remains first. And then the body is just the means of the active subject being already there as conscience to express. No. L'incarnation is to find yourself in the situation, in the condition to be incarnated. And not to self-expression. Self-expression is already a further step. But we are expressive because we are bodily. Because we are bodily, we are touchable. And here he introduces what he calls the maternal being of the subject. The psyche is the maternal body. I bear, I try to translate to understand. I bear an ethical tattoo in my flesh. A tatoeage. I am a Salesian, so I'm very curious always why boys and girls curve in the trees their heart with the names, because one generation later it's still there. Even if they miss their boyfriend, they ask them, oh, it's gone. Yeah. But it's the tattoo, and something is tattooed, it's there as a visceral reality. And you are this being tattooed. You are exposed to the other. You are not self-exposition. For example, when Levinas uses the term exposition, he does not mean I expose myself to the other. Pay attention, Levinas is not, pay attention is the finger of Levinas, I borrowed it from him. Sorry, I lose my mind. Pay attention, yeah, by myself, yeah. You see, I don't say, I express myself towards the other. I discover that I am already expressing in relation with the other as expression, as being exposed. I don't expose myself to the other, I am already exposed. So the passive dimension is first. But in the naive phenomenology, the present time is first. The active, I present myself. So therefore, he considers the incarnation as being incarnated, as being body and flesh, as expression towards the other, as touchable by and for the other, as maternal body. And I quote some elements, but there are a lot of elements. Growing of the entrails. I quote from the philosophical writings, because also in his Jewish writings it's very, very present. Because it refers to the rachamim, the mercy of God. Growing of the entrails, having the other in one skin, bearing par excellence. It's not bearing. In Europe, I don't know how it's going in the Philippines. In Europe today, we don't speak about, parents don't say anymore that they conceive a child. In our language, disappeared conceiving a child. But we more and more say, also on the birth cards, we find we made a daughter. We made a daughter. And sometimes we thank for it. It's very contradictory. You have not to thank for what you made. But we make, we make. But you conceive. And as Levinas says, you never get the children you long for. Sometimes I say to parents, you never get the children you make. They are always other. Because they are put in you. Conception is something strange to be born, but to conceive is something strange because the other is put in you. No? It's not I, the active one. There is something very active in it, but in this activity I'm very passive. That's why we say, thanks, it's a gift. Sometimes it's a wrong gift. Like my nephew said, dear uncle, we didn't like this child because it's handicapped. We didn't long for it. That's very contradictory. Okay. So having the other in one's skin, bearing par excellence, not bearing in the active sense, but to have, to bear. Gestation of the other in the same. So let us consider a little bit closer the anthropological and ethical implications of this approach, this term. I only give some examples because the whole book of Otherwise Than Being, you have not to reread, for example, the first part. You will discover, oh yes, continuously he is trying to introduce that new perspective, this umwertung, this change of perspective. In the same, in the depth of being, and in the depth of our interest, there is something strange and disturbing going on at work. Something we did not notice at first sight. And that's what he calls, in Otherwise Than Being, in the later works, the other in the same. So, this other in the same has different dimensions. A first dimension, we can call it a negative dimension. The other put in the same, being there, I'm bearing, despite myself, malgré moi. It happens to me. God damned. I don't know. Go to hell. Don't say it, but you think it. Because it's something intolerable. It's something very difficult. You see, Levinas is not a philosopher of altruism. is not a philosopher of, oh, I like to love you, but don't stay at your place, please. It's not this kind of urge, a kind of passion to, this passion in the passive sense, but not a kind of, wow, marvelous thing. So I'm so upset in the Year of Mercy, some comments in the Year of Mercy proclaimed by the Pope, that some Christians in the States has published so many texts about the mercy as the most altruistic garbage possible. Because it's not first about what I am as a hero of goodness. It's not heroism. It's not a new Heideggerian authenticity. No, it's something going on with me. I don't get it. It's very difficult. So it's sobering up. It's sobering up. Dégrisement in French, dégrisement. In my letter of 75 to him as a student, young student, with my 9 questions and with his 9 answers, 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on a certain moment I asked him the question about the Hasidism and the mystical experience in Eastern Europe, because I was not yet aware of the Mitnaget and the Mitnagdim thing. And so he mentioned that, do you not know about the Mitnaget? Okay, I didn't know. And he said, I don't like the mystique of enthusiasm, that everything comes from within, as if you give yourself, like the most general one, to confuse yourself with the divine and to give yourself through that. So, but he answered my letter, my question. Yes, for me, my approach, 75, no? It's the second move of time. C'est une mystique du dégrisement. My philosophy is a mystique of disenchantment, not of enthusiasm, but of disenchantment, sobering up, waking up, disturbing, but it moves you, it puts you on the track, it inspires you, and therefore this first movement, this first level of this other in me is the disturbing one. He calls it also scrupulosity. You know, scrupulous, Scrupulous is a pebble in your shoe. When you are a walker, I see in the morning so many people here running, walking for their health, and for the rest of the day so stupid to be sit down. Okay, and then in the evening go up for walking. Some of them run faster because they have a pebble in the shoe. Scrupulous in Latin means a pebble in the shoe. And so it bothers you. It doesn't give you, wow, I feel myself so well. I'm in heaven. No, I'm not in heaven. It disturbs me. Levinas speaks in French with the expression mal à l'aise, ill at ease, uncomfortable. Or also, in the Dieu qui vient dans l'idée of God who comes to mind, he speaks of a kind of contra-experience of counter-nature. It's against your own nature. And therefore, here we discover how he redefines the subject as being ambiguous. At first sight, very substantial, very firm. I put myself, like in the l'existant, his first works, the existence and existence, la position de moi-même. But this subject then disturbed by the il y a. And then you have the insomnia. You have to know all the categories of Levinas, of the first move in existence and existence, the existant, return back here, because here he speaks again about the disturbance of the subject, not posing itself, but being deposed, like a king deposed, like the prime minister sent away. You lose your place. So the subject is ambiguous. It's a troubled being. It is being at ease, having a position, being certain, having your place to live, the world, your place and your stability. We are unstable, we are destabilized. So that's the trauma, the wound, the crisis of being not outside, but inside the being itself. So we are in the amphibology, he calls it. That contradiction. We are a strange being. Even if you have a beggar passing you and you don't give because you think that beggars are stupid people, you feel yourself a little bit stupid because you think that they are stupid. So even that is disturbing you. A small moment, it's not for long, because we learn to overcome it. Because that's civilization, to overcome sleeplessness. Okay, the positive dimension then is qualified by Levinas as animation. But animation, I don't animate myself. I am, despite myself, I am animated. I am ensouled or inspired. Moved. So here he introduces the idea of soul. L'âme. L'autre c'est mon âme. The other is my soul. Or he also speaks of soul within the soul. Going deeper. So it's my underground. He also uses the category de profundis. From my depth on. So the ensoulment of the same by the other. Qualified as explosion of the other in the same. Disturbing me. So in this inside down, we become extraverted. So in this sense, also this implies already what I mentioned, the shift in vision on the time itself. So in phenomenology you have the present time, here and now, reciprocity. In his phenomenology of the other and my responsibility, we have the experience and the phenomenology of the future, not future. The English word future is not the right word, because Levinas does not use futur. He uses the word in French avenir, to come. It comes from elsewhere. Adventure. Yeah, adventure. Adventus. Adventus, yeah. That's the future coming from elsewhere. You cannot deduce in the future, you can deduce from the physis, from nature, and foresee the future. Because you have science in the being here and now, in history, in society. You have all elements to discover, and you prognose by diagnosing your time, and you prognose the future. Physis is the criterion, but it's continuity. The advertising people are futurists, futurologists, because they try to know our future behavior based on the signals of our actual behavior and reactions, and they discover by analyzing our present. But the other is not my future. You cannot deduce it, the other from my signals is outside. That's yesterday. This radical heteronomy, this radical otherness. But now here we discover the probably more important dimension of time, namely not the present, not the future, the avenir, adventus, but the past. It happened in the past. What he calls the immemorial past. You cannot recuperate the past. I was in South Africa some weeks ago and was deeply shocked in Bloemfontein by one of the very famous big memorials on the second and the first Boer War. Of the Boer, the farmers, the Dutch, with their black people against the British, becoming the colonizers for whole South Africa. There was a big battle, a big struggle. And so the British started the separation of both the segregation, the apartheid, by the concentration camps they organized at the end of the 19th century, 1902 also. And they separated black women and children and white women and children in separate concentration camps. and they all died by starvation. So now today, the white remembered very well that they were victims, but the forgotten, the overlooked, are the black concentration camps. There were 77 white concentration camps of women and children all dying, and there were 66 black concentration camps, all the women and children dying. But there is no place to be commemorated. It's very shocking. It's very shocking. So this is because you commemorate and you forget. And forgetting means, oh, that you are not taking responsibility. So in this sense, here he introduces what he calls the impossible commemoration, because it's the immemorial past, never to forget. And it's a passivity more passive than every kind of passivity. I have put there the word receptivity. Receptivity is still too active. Because I'm receptive. No, I'm not receptive. I was made receptive. So, I was marked by an event that irreversibly precedes my consciousness of free initiative. It's always impossible to bring it back in the present. But because it's impossible, it's the real memory. And so there Levinas speaks, what precedes my free and conscious initiative, it's our situation, our condition, or unconditioned to be created. He forms the word, French word, créaturalité. Créaturalité does not exist in the vocabulary. Creature, no, createdness. The prehistory of the self. And so this introduced the idea of diachrony, not the synchrony, not the synthesis. I bring everything together. So by the memory of what happened in the past, you can never bring back. Levinas always said, I am ashamed to be a survivor. Because the first and the last is the trauma in me I cannot tell. I cannot even explain. I cannot even, and I have to live as if it is not there. No? But it's there, because if I do as if it is not there, it's there. Irrecuperable. So, sorry my excitement. Okay. So you see how this introduces us to a redefinition of the subject and of our human condition. I use here the term of Hannah Arendt, not used by Levinas, but it helps us to see what is going on. It's the human condition pre-conscious, not conceived by myself, but discovered by myself. Yesterday there was someone asking for the term revelation, if I remember, in one of the sessions. So revelation is, it reveals itself before I can think or I understand. See, before I tune myself actively to the other, I already was, in spite of myself, attuned to the other. He calls it also the pre-original. If I am as conscious, free initiative, the origin, the source, arche, the principle of my being, no? My acting, there is something in this acting, in this being, something pre-original, preceding myself as origin, anarchic, before me as arche. So in my being, I am also otherwise than being. So the otherwise than being is not outside, but inside me. And so for Levinas, I hope I understand well, I hope, because it's a word with so many different meanings. Here he speaks about, in French, me, not I. Because I in the grammar posits itself. I'm the arche. So, and here he introduces, and always again he repeats, the very famous French expression, me voici. And in English we translate, and there it goes wrong, here I am. As if I said, here I am, look at me, here I am. There is this very nice guy taking care of the others, here I am. No. This is too nominative, this is too active, this is too, how to say, cogito minded. Because me voici, even in French, and it's there in, otherwise it'll be in several places, indicates, you know, even in French, it's a grammatical form without nominative. You cannot say in French, je suis ici. Doesn't make sense. You can only say me voici. So me means I am put already before I can decide. I am put in the accusative. I stay under accusation. I stay in the accusative. And of course, this refers for him to the whole biblical tradition. And as I said yesterday, it's not true because it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible because it's true. Me voici, hineni, is the Hebrew word for me voici, also without nominative. So I discovered myself as answerable. Not I answer. You see, that's second. What at the first sight is given, I answer for you. Now, I discovered going back, I am answerable. If something went on with me, I am in a very strange situation, I don't understand myself. So, me voici. Here I am. No, not here I am. Do you remember Richard Cohen, the singer, the Jewish singer of Canada? When he died, last time, that's one of his last songs was "You Want a Daughter." It's a remarkable prayer. It's a prayer full of also chutzpah, of chutzpah. And every strophe ends by hineni, hineni, hineni. Here I am, Lord. Yeah, and then you have the trouble. But it's very nice. Through all his struggles of life, all his questions, all his bourgeois life, and also his seduction, and also his contradictions with God, with the divine. You find in the song, it's a very troubled song. It's not a song for the early morning to be in peace with yourself, because it makes you ill at ease. But then he expresses this strange, being given, hineni. I find it a remarkable song. Sorry, my emotion. Exposed to be given to the other, despite ourselves. It's not my heroic act. It's not my pride. It's not my, my value. It's my destiny. It's my fate. It's something bothering me very much. And so Levinas calls this the very miracle of the human in being. Namely, the pre-original human condition of brotherhood. That's also interesting. In other words, he continuously speaks of brotherhood. I know very well when I met him that he was, and you told it also yesterday, he was really French. So he once said to me, for a Flemish, a little bit strange for a Belgian, La France, c'est le pays des droits de l'homme. France is the country of the human rights. Of course, I think in a nationalist way, as a Flemish, and that's risky, very risky. But he wanted to say, it's the country of fraternity. And in 1989, he has written 4 articles on the French Revolution and human rights. And in the 4 articles, of different kinds, very difficult to find today, because there are some are in entre nous, but others are small things. So, and he suggests to reverse the order of the French triplet: freedom, equality, brotherhood, fraternity, and to reverse it, because now the time has come to start with the condition, human condition of fraternity as source for freedom, inspired freedom, and a source for equality. But fraternity is much more than the contract. We agree to be each other's brothers. But we are, I remember in one of his comments, am I my brother's keeper? He answered, yes, you are, even if you don't like it. No? Because it's not a question of decision making. It's not a question of your initiative. We are interconnected. We discover ourselves as put in that strange form of connectedness. As I quote there, one of the texts of Levinas, from Otherwise Than Being, I am bound to the other before any liaison contracted. So brotherhood, fraternity, precedes the contract. I know some people say don't use brotherhood, fraternity, use interconnectedness, but I'm a little bit stubborn. I like more brotherhood and fraternity than interconnectedness. Even if it is a little bit gender linked. But why every word should be understood in a gender way? Fraternity is also going beyond. I'm bound to the other before any liaison contracted. This is a relationship of kinship outside all biology. But don't forget, for Levinas, biology already reveals the pre-original fraternity. Because I did not make the choice for my sister. I have 3 sisters. One I like more than the others. But I had not a choice for my sister. They did not have a choice for me, their brother. So we are already in the situation of being incarnated despite ourselves, linked with each other before any kind of contract. Let's agree about. There's no agreement about. So that's this fraternity as being caught up in fraternity, it being implied despite myself, a kind of strange complicity with the other. So in this, for Levinas, this fraternity as being caught up in this implication, in this being linked, connected with the other, is the condition, and here I quote the very strong terms of Otherwise Than Being, already quoted by Levinas yesterday morning, it's the condition for being hostage, that there can be in the world pity, compassion, pardon, and proximity, the condition for all solidarity. And here appear the terms substitution, hostage, expiation, but let me make a remark. The altruistic reading of these terms is very horrible and risky. Don't do it, please. Don't preach substitution. Don't tell you have to substitute. Because that's a horrible thing. It's not a question of generosity. It's not a question of my goodwill. It's not a question of choice. I am put in the situation of being the hostage of the other. In one of the interviews with Alain Charon, the interview asked him, does the category of substitution, coming and expiation and hostage, does it come from the Bible? And I can see Levinas, because I knew him, he could be very stubborn, a little bit aggressive sometimes, didn't like certain reactions. He said, no, not at all. Don't forget that in the war, there was the evil of hostage. In the war, there was the evil of hostage. That means when 6 Jews tried to run away from the camp, in the morning 60 Jews were killed, substituting the 6 Jews running away. So they were substituted. This was not a glory of expressing yourself. In despite of yourself, you are considered as sharing the same destiny, and you don't like it, but you are put in the place of the other. When parents, for example in Belgium and Europe, Muslim parents hostage their children, go to take their children because they are separated, divorced, and the Belgian women keep their children and they want to bring back their own children to Morocco or something. So then they hostage the children. So that's a form of evil. So Levinas wanted to say, don't forget, hostage happens so many times. In Philippines, if I have to dare to say, people are shot substituting others. And people are in prison. And the mothers going to visit the criminal doers, not only the victim, but the criminals, are substituting, are expiating, despite themselves. They did not make the choice by generosity. You are put in a very contradictory situation. An aumônier, a pastoral worker in Dendermonde, one of our prisons, he comes to see me every 2 months for what they call intervision and supervision. She tells me how one of the big pedophiles of Belgium is there in prison. So he always is put apart because the other prisoners want to kill him. So he's put apart. And so he tells that his mother does not come to visit him. His 2 sisters, one of them does not come to visit him. He has no visit, except his one younger sister comes to visit him. And she told me, I talked with her to know what it means. She said, I don't like to come, but someone has to come. You cannot give up. And so she said, I feel guilt for him. I'm not guilty. You see? Expiation, substitution. We are culpable, not being culpable. We take care of each other, not being culpable. Not because I like it, but we are put in this kind of communal destiny. And in the modern idea, you are only responsible for yourself. Go to hell to take responsibility of others. Everyone takes care of his own, her own self. But we are linked, that's Levinas' idea, in the pre-original situation, not making the choice for it, that we are together. In Belgium, one of the congregations, the older confrères refused to give their pension to the superiors to pay for the victims of one confrère pedophile. But you are, for better and for worse, responsible, and for the perpetrator and for the victims. You see what I mean? So in this sense, Levinas is right when he says it's really exaggerated, it's impossible, but it's something also real. It's not something only hyperbolic in a kind of methodological approach. It's something very real. So we are linked with each other, and it's not a question of a kind of natural or divine instinct. It's not an altruistic urge. It's not a natural benevolence. It's not some tendency to sacrifice. I've quoted there, sacrifice rather than sacrificing itself. I find it a remarkable expression in that. Sacrifice rather than sacrificing oneself. Allegiance to the good. So, but it's not a determinism. It's not unavoidably falling down like a stone. We are free, and the ethical appeal in it, it's appealing us to a free answer. So here, redefining our freedom as inspired freedom, the heteronomy of freedom that the Greeks have not taught to us. It's not a neutral free choice between 2 equal possibilities. I have to choose the way of responsibility, but I can choose the other way. But I find myself in the position of being responsible despite myself. Despite oneself, starting with oneself, in the duty to give to the other even the bread out of one's mouth, and to quote from one's own shoulders, not by generosity, but by fatality. It's kind of ethical fatum. And therefore, Levin, you are right, when you mentioned yesterday, this has to be corrected in the practice by the 3rd, that's for tomorrow also. Yes, but Levinas tries to describe a very strange condition we are engaged in without any engagement of ourselves, previous to any kind of commitment. And all this brings us to the infinite as the good in me, the religious transdescendence. Yesterday I talked about this. I reread the text literally now. I pronounce the word without surpassing the intermediaries that lead me to this world, and if I can say so, the anarchy of his entry into discourse of God who comes to mind, the book of 82. Just as phenomenology states concepts without ever destroying the scaffoldings that permit one to climb to them. And here we have a new form of scaffolding, this ethical situation, condition to discover that we are put in this impossible, incapable fraternity. Here there is a discussion with Ricoeur. Ricoeur defines the human subject as the capable I. Brotherhood is not a capacity as active possibility, potentiality. It's something before capacity. And so the global perspective of this is otherwise than being. Here I have to jump. So this otherwise than being in the self, not as being otherwise, is transcending in the interest itself. And as we have seen yesterday, this transcendence is beyond the self, outside, but also inside, the transdescendence. And here he introduces again God as the infinite, not outside me through the face of the other, appearing me, but discovering in myself as being touchable, being affectable, as the idea of the infinite in me. God in me. Not God outside me, but inside me. The immanence of God, the immanence of God's transcendence in me. And so he plays words. In the infinite signifying within me, but not the finite. No identification, no coincidence, no collusion, no confusion. So infinite, literally the infinite in the finite, God in me, in my de profundis, my animation, my soul. The one who asked the question about the Holy Spirit, you see, we are not so far away, in a very different way. Yeah. But you see, my soul, my animation, my inspiration, but never coinciding. God is there, but I don't grasp him. I cannot say, oh, I touch you, here you are. Oh, therefore we have to pray psalms by the exteriority of prayers, by the Our Father, by all kinds of, by God's hand, au nom de Dieu. So, and there we have the strange non-experience of the transcendent placed in my immanence as disproportion, as the monstruosity, he calls it the monstruosity of the infinite. The uneasiness, the vision of the infinite in me. But of course, this is an ethically qualified idea of the infinite. Here we can see how he makes a distinction between the bad infinity of what Hegel calls le mauvais infini, the negative, the boring infinity, of the never-ending process. For example, in mathematics, you have the limit and you have to go beyond the limit. And the limit has to be expanded. And so on, and so on, and so on, never-ending. Time and again other, and so on ad infinitum. The apeiron as the unlimited indetermination. But this is a formal, not qualified infinity. But for Levinas, it's a qualified infinity, revealing itself in the goodness as desire. So, as we officially explained yesterday morning, when Levinas speaks of the desire, he does not speak of the desire as expression of the need, of the necessity. I'm hungry. It's in contrast with the need. Eros is not only the child of indigence, but also the child of abundance. And there you have the experience of the infinite through and in the desire beyond need. Desire is of a different order than that of the hedonic activity by which the desirable is infected as an object of need. And the desire without hunger or appetite, I repeat. So, and he refers to a scene in Crime and Punishment, where Dostoevsky describes Sonia Marmeladova looking with insatiable compassion, not as a virtue, but as something happening with her. It's stronger than herself, it's despite herself, she is engaged in a life she doesn't like to be engaged. So, and she is looking with insatiable compassion at Raskolnikov in his despair. He does not say inexhaustible compassion, as if the compassion that goes from Sonia to Raskolnikov were a hunger that Raskolnikov's presence nourished beyond all satisfaction by increasing that hunger infinitely. And this goodness beyond need, this goodness never good enough, becomes the prophetic, how to say, witness of the infinite, not by works, first, but by the practice of the responsibility for the other. Of course expressed in the verbal form of the prophetic, here I am, me voici, in the name of God, without referring myself directly to his presence. You have never beheld the poor saying, here I am, in the name of God. Be silent of God. Here I am, despite myself. The word God is still absent from the phrase in which God is for me the first time involved in words. As a sign given to the other, the here I am signifies the name of God at the service of others who concern me. I finish by a story, if I have some 3 minutes. Okay, the story of the angels. Concluding and putting in synthesis insight. It's a story Levinas quote refers once or twice, but once in hors sujet, outside the subject, very shortly. He has told me personally this story 4 times, because he always forgot that he told me the story. That's always nice. And therefore, like I do, I tell always stories, and my story is always the same, never the same. Okay, that's midrash. Your own stories are midrashim of stories. Burggraeve story. So on a certain day, I tell my midrash of his midrash of the story. So on a certain moment, there is a strike in heaven. Angels are discontent. Angels are protesting against the Lord because the Lord finally decided to bring down the Torah he created, the law, as the essence, as the orientation of the whole universe, what should be done to make sense, to give meaning. He decides to bring it down to the earth to be done by humans. So the angels hear about his project and they are very malcontent, and discontent, they don't like it. Because they think, oh my Lord, he overlooks us. Are we not good enough? And so they organize themselves. And on the third moment, the Lord sees them approaching from far. And he is very curious. Levinas said me the second time, because God is not omniscient. Therefore he is curious. Someone who knows everything is not interested in what happens, the other to tell to you. So, give us not omniscient God. Yeah. So, and when he approach, he is asking the question, what is bothering you? Because he sees that something bothering them. And they say, Lord, you have to justify. Again, you have the chutzpah. Justifying, explaining, provoking Lord. And the Lord says, I will explain why I decided to bring down from heaven to the earth the Torah to be done by humans. But before I answer your question, you have to answer my question. It's like a politician. Or it's like a rabbi discussing. So, angels are very eager to know, because they are very sure that it will work, because you are so close to the Lord that they will understand every question of the Lord. So, you know, the question of the Lord is, do you work sweating? Do you work sweating? The sweat of your front. Silence of the angels. Because they look at each other and say, do you understand what you mean by sweat? Do you know what he is talking about? Work. So they don't get the question. So they are very wise, they don't answer. So the Lord says, okay, sorry, I would like to answer your question, but before you don't give your answer to my question. And God is in retreat, anachoretic God, the Tzintzum, reducing himself to nothing. So after a time, that's the interruption. So 2 minutes to finish my story. Yeah. The unmoved mover, the most indifferent. Once I have written with Levinas an article I tried to do with him because he had no time and he phoned me up to say there's one phrase missing. At the end you have to say and to express God is the most stranger of all. Le plus étranger de tous. So he's strange, but because he's touchable. And so He goes back to the angels and says, let me give them a new occasion. And so the angels are very pleased with the new possibility to get an answer on their question, why do you give the Torah to be done by humans and not to us angels, being higher, no? And the Lord says, I have a certain question. My certain question is this: do you buy and sell things? Angels were very shocked, because angels don't buy and sell things. They don't have banks, they don't have money. But they were scandalized, because money is the dirty money, is the good money, is the money in banks, the corruption of the money, and you know, all the crises of money. But finally he said, but what is really his question? So they don't answer, because they really don't get. So God is in a retreat a second time, Tzintzum, contracting. After the time, he feels sorry. And he goes back and he says, all good things in three. Huh? And so he has a third question. And all the angels are a little bit more prudent, cautious. The third question is this: do you appropriate? And they are even more shocked than with the second question: do you buy and sell things? Do you appropriate? But they ask each other, do you know what it means? Because they don't know. They don't know. So they don't really get the question. And being wise, they don't answer. And then God is in a retreat forever. What is now the answer to the question of the angels? Why do you give to do the Torah to humans and not to angels? What is the question? What is the answer? So the rabbis, having this midrash, this strange story, they start discussing. And at a certain moment, one of the disciples, the pupils, says, could it be that angels cannot understand the questions because they don't have a body? And indeed, the rabbi affirms, indeed, the angels cannot really understand the question, because the most essential to fulfill the Torah, to have a body. Because to sell and buy things, to work, to sweat and to procreate, you need to have a body. And so then the rabbi gives, and this is also in the text of Levinas, the rabbi then answers, you know, here we really touch the divine with our finger. Namely, the human being, he had to give to do the Torah to the human beings, because the human being is the being touchable by and through the suffering of the other, because he is bodily, he has a body. You see, that's the infinite through the flesh, being touchable. And if there is a place where the infinite comes to mind, is this sensibility. Let us thank the Lord that we are not angels. Thank you very much.
We'll take a restroom break of 5 minutes, and then afterwards, expect you to return for the discussion of Father Burggraave's lecture. Thank you. Kindly come to the center and then identify yourself. Maybe request you to do that prior to asking the question. Thank you. Yes, we have a question.
My name is Socio-Political from Japan, Katholieke University from Japan, Tokyo. And thank you for your excellent conference. I asked you about how do you think about virtue ethics?
Virtue ethics. Yeah.
The reason why I asked you about virtue ethics is following. Because I have always difficulty to distinguish Levinas ethics, I have always difficulty to distinguish Levinas ethics from virtue ethics. Because when, as you said, Levinas pointed out the importance of affectability.
Yes, yes.
And affectability, that when we say the affectability as the ability, I'm always wondering if we can call this affectability as ability. And it is, I think, it is not ability, it's what you said. And it's not ability, but impossibility to refuse. Impossibility to refuse the others appeal, others
Yes.
suffering.
Yes.
But when we call it, do we call it ability? We have this to name Levinas ethics too close to virtue ethics.
Okay.
And what you mentioned about confusion between Levinas responsibility and the tendency to the natural tendency. It shows us the best way to distinguish Levinas ethics from virtue ethics, I think. But then I want to ask you, how do you think about virtue ethics? Because even Levinas, I think even Levinas thinks that it is necessary to flourish our ability or our virtue of benevolence or like that. So that it is my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very, very deep question, I think, and very important. You are very right. You cannot identify Levinas with the kind of virtue ethics. That's what I meant by saying don't consider him as an altruistic thinker, because then you speak of the goodwill to be developed as if you are the one taking initiative to develop that capacity or that potentiality to be a virtuous way of doing. That's right. Because his approach is before that. It's speaking about our human condition as appealable. And of course you are right, responsibility could suggest, and that's the exasperation method, you could suggest that it's a question of capability, l'homme capable, the capable person, as if ability is showing a capacity you develop. And then Levinas has to correct himself, because in language, we are so familiar with this active language, receptivity, not passivity, but passivity as receptivity, yeah. And then we have to correct. That's this method of Husserl calling into question the naive intuition. You are very right. And in this sense, responsibility, accentuating this ability as capacity would be very wrong, because then it becomes a kind of natural instinct or a divine instinct or a virtue you develop, as if you are the source of it. But before or beyond, but I would say, at the hither side of virtue development, all of a sudden we discover that we are put in this condition, in this unconditioned, to be responsible. I think you are very right to ask this question, and in this sense it's impossible to refuse. But on the other hand, for Levinas, this appealability is, as it were, la trace de Dieu. It's something very vulnerable. It's not like a stone falling down. And when you take a stone and you let it go, it falls down. stonden we vandaan. A kind of unavoidable necessity. So, your impossibility refuse really on the level of the active ethics following on this passive condition is not a kind of determinism. Levinas in Ethics and Infinity, he says, I am not against ethics as development of system of rules, and I would add as a system of thinking of virtues in the line of St. Thomas, for example, or Aristotle. He is not against, but the question is asking precedes that reality, because he wants to discover how we are tattooed, how we are conditioned, how we are created, how we are. In my presentation, I jumped it. On a certain moment in Geneva, he dialogued with some theologians, and they asked him about, do you define the human being as animal rationale? And he said, no. I define the human being as a theological being, the image of God. That means, but the image of God is not, I present myself as image of God. We are, the other discovers, or myself, sometimes in contradiction with my own longings. I discover that I am created in that position. So that's the touchability. And so in this sense, the human being is even in its pre-original, pre-active, pre-initiative freedom created as a divine being, a theological being. I had some, but I don't know if I will find it. You see there, man is not a rational animal. He resembles God. This is not Aristotelian at all. I ask myself if it would not be possible to affirm that the psyche is originally theological. That's a very strong affirmation. The theological redefinition of ethics, because it's founded in the divine, because I'm touchable, made responsible, despite myself, for the other, the humanness of man understood as theology. And this precedes, and Levinas is not interested to develop a virtue ethics, or even a deontological rule ethics. But he knows that this can be developed. And I think what I see in my work, for example, I'm an ethicist. So a Christian ethicist is asked not as philosophers, but to train people in caregiving, in social work and so on. And I try to show how Levinas reveals who we are before we discuss about what we have to do and how we have to do. But of course, then you can also develop, but with great carefulness, a virtue ethics. Responsibility can be developed as a virtue, but therefore we need also what I will tell tomorrow. Please come back tomorrow. Because it's something then through my free will and through my capacities. But of course it's preceded by something what we call in the religious tradition, you are created in the image of the Lord. But you are tattooed, you are infected, already infected in the past, and you don't know where it comes from. Where it comes from. La trace de Dieu. It's something very serious. Sometimes in your prayer, you pray, God, let pass by this chalice because it's horrible. I don't like it at all. So, in this sense, virtue ethics is not in contradiction, but his position is not a virtue ethics. Does it make impossible the development of virtue ethics? No. But then you will see, through this responsibility as taking for source, for thinking about the virtue of responsibility, probably we will have to develop other virtues than in the traditional way we develop the ideas of virtues. Like, for example, ecological reality also makes us responsible. What I find very remarkable, a lot of ecologists I meet in Flanders, and I discuss with them, they don't know Levinas, and they have a deep resentment against Christianity, Catholicism. But when I explain Levinas, they understand very well, because they know very well that ecological urge they feel, it reveals something. We are We are responsible for this world and for the future generations, not because we are virtuous persons, but because we are humanity taking care of the whole cosmos. And this is a human condition. I say, yes, that's exactly this pre-original, this anarchic condition we are created in and we discover. And of course then, ecological ethics is to develop virtues to make possible and real this taking care of the world for the future generations. And then I recommend always, not Levinas to read Levinas further, also, but to read Hans Jonas. Do you know Hans Jonas? Hans Jonas is a Jewish thinker, one of the disciples of Heidegger, together with Hannah Arendt, who has written, in contrast with the book of Bloch, Ernst Bloch, on utopia, Das Prinzip Hoffnung, the principle of hope. He has written a book in the 80s, Das Prinzip Verantwortung, the principle of responsibility. And he develops this as being responsible. It's very sad that neither Jonas, neither Levinas have read each other. Because there is a deep affinity in their approach of responsibility. But of course then, Hans Jonas is much more, intrigued to develop this foundation, founding, inspiring responsibility for the future generations, to develop it as a virtue ethics. And then he introduces the prudence of Aristotle. That's very interesting. And the fear for the negative consequence of science, how to cope with foreseeable consequences and so on. And there he introduces the phronesis of Aristotle. So he reintroduces and redefines the virtue of phronesis after he introduced us in our human condition as being responsible for the future generation. And that's very, very Levinasian in a certain sense, because both of them are aware, and Hans Jonas develops both dimensions, that first we have to see how our being is not what modernity proclaims to be, namely that we are responsible because we make a free decision. Responsibility is for modernity based on freedom. But we are responsible before we are free. Of course, we have to give a free answer, and then you can learn from each other. That's education, that's virtue ethics, that's also practical ethics. But we have to see that there is something deeper. The mystery of the human being is being accountable. Ricoeur explains in a remarkable article in Le Juste, you know, the volume Le Juste, The Just, volume 1. It's published in English. Very expensive. Too expensive. Horrible. Horrible. The semantics of responsibility. And this is a very interesting article because it shows how in history responsibility started not as an ethical idea, but as a political idea. The King of the UK had to give account. He was accountable before the Senate. And he had to justify the way he governed about the past. So there was, in the original idea of being responsible, you are a sinner or a virtuous person. And you look back. And then Ricoeur shows how Levinas and how Jonas played an important role to make a shift from the retrospective interpretation of responsibility, looking backward, like Catholics go to confession for sinning. Many Catholics don't go to confession anymore, but have a strong feeling of responsibility for the future of their children. That's not in contradiction, but it's different. It's a shift from a retrospective perspective of responsibility on a prospective one. And their Levinas, their Ricoeur, their Buber, the dialogical thinkers, their Hans Jonas play an important role because they show that the keyword of the real modernity is responsibility as ground and perspective and animation of freedom. And that's the reason why brotherhood precedes freedom. You see, I fully agree. I try to say it in my own words, and in this sense, it's very tricky, but it's very necessary also to develop a kind of new virtue ethics through this idea of being responsible. Of course, then enters all the practical questions of weighing, measuring, the prudence, the prudentia. Then we need the wisdom of the Greek. We need really the wisdom of the Greek. But the wisdom of the Greek are not first here. Yeah. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Giving me the opportunity.
By the way, since most of us have taken our snacks, after the open forum, we'll proceed right away to the parallel sessions. We can entertain last 2 questions.
I will try to be short.
Okay. Yes, the guy with the black jacket. To be followed by. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Jay, sir. I'm from the UST Faculty of Arts and Letters.
Okay.
I major in philosophy. Hi, Father Burggraeve. Before my question is actually weird. I'm not sure if it's a good question. But before that, I would like to point out a term in Filipino.
Yeah.
It's actually the concept of bothersome, being bothered. We have a bothersome word that is equivalent to that. It's nakakapagpabagabag. The word itself is bothersome, and it means bothersome as well.
Okay. You have to write it for me afterwards.
Oh, sure. It will be a pleasure.
Yeah.
So my question is anchored on the feeling and the experience of pagkapagabag, the feeling of bothersome. I was thinking, is this feeling of bothersome, this human experience of being bothered by the other or by the infinite, is this something cultural? Because I'm thinking of a what if. What if there is a culture that is not actually their culture is not egocentric. Their culture is always towards the other. Will they be able to experience this experience of pagkabagabag of the other or not? So I guess the question is it cultural?
Okay, thank you for the question, very important question. Because it's a question we have to ask. There are a lot of situations in cultures, in societies, in communities, where people never come to the level of being aware of this vocation, of being appealed and appealable, and having responsibility for each other. And sometimes we have to admit and to recognize that sometimes civilizations are not really developing that basic condition of humans. That's our choice. And there are situations where it is made difficult. In education, there are families where I remember at home with other families taking care, for example, of rabbits. Sorry, stupid example, but of rabbits. My mother was very sensitive for that question because she held rabbits to kill and to eat, but also to take care of rabbits. For example, she was always very angry when other children of the neighborhood used rabbits to play and to use and to, how to say, as a Playmobil, as something. And she was angry, but other people found it very normal. So in that situation, finding normal that you make suffering animals and so on, is something so obvious that this sensibility as condition of humanity can be destroyed because it's something of a tattoo. It's not, that's what I meant, it's not an evident stone falling down from heaven. It has to be developed through culture. And you can have a culture forgetting. You can have a culture forgetting. When I listened so many times in the night, so time ago, to all the trials in South Africa, where we had the witnesses and you know, without without what they don't call in South Africa Afrikaner, because the Afrikaner are the white, but the blacks. That these people being there listening, that without their culture of Ubuntu, of being linked with each other, of being in responsibility through and by and for the other, in their own words, that without this culture, the whole reconciliation process and the process of reconciliation of truth introduced by Tutu would have been impossible in practice. That was what touched me very deeply. So it's not something you organize, but it presupposes a culture. So in this sense, Christianity has always to be also a culture. Judaism, the Jewish community is a culture, because it makes possible, it develops, and then it can become a virtue. Of course, it's always so that there are situations where it goes against. And sometimes you see in families, in groups, that through situations, there is this harshness, closing, forgetting, not taking care. I remember that my father was, sorry that I quote my parents, my father was cynical about marriage. They were convinced that marriage was a stupid thing, but they still remained married. And my father did not like this, because this culture of cynicism in the family about marriage, if you have to educate children in that spirit, then you stop believing in love for a future, in taking care of children for always, in taking care of each other when you're old and sick. And but this cynicism hinders to develop what we all are. So it's not, you cannot go in the streets and say, oh, I see sensibility. Sometimes you see it. But I will speak about that also tomorrow. That you sometimes see. You already mentioned my little booklet.
Okay, our last question. Yes. Come to the island.
I am Marvlandini, the spirit. But earlier you said that, or my interpretation of your interpretation of Levinas, that affectability is the source of reason. How is this related to Hume's, David Hume's ethics of ethics, of classical ethics, that indeed sentiments or feelings are the source of reason, or moral feelings are the source of moral reason.
Of course, it's the affectability is a very specific interpretation of emotion. It's not an emotion of coming up, oh, I like this coffee, superficial emotions, or going in the street and I feel something touching me, yes. But it's something deeper. We are conditioned as emotionally because we are touchable. That's the affectability. And so this passes before reason, or it's also a source of reason, because it helps us to discover a specific form of wisdom, to understand, to look at reality, to look through the other, so to understand what can be useful. Of course, then also the practical reason, what Aristotle calls the practical reason, can help us very much. Also the technical reason. To finish, no? There is a Jewish, a Hasidic story of two peasants meeting each other after 25 years. They have seen each other and they meet each other in Kharkov. Kharkov is one of the cities of Ukraine, in fact, the former Ukraine, now taken by the Russians again. And they meet each other and they he said, oh wow, it's 25 years we have seen each other. Let's drink, let's have a good wine. So they drink a glass of wine. And of course, it always helps. And after this first glass of wine, the one says to the other, you know, I'm so glad I see you. You don't have any idea, you don't have an idea how much I'm glad to see you. How attached I am to you. Okay, the other says, if is this the case, let's drink another glass of wine. Okay, they drink another glass of wine. And then the second, again to the first says, but you don't even know, huh? You're not really aware how deep is my friendship, my attachment to you. And immediately the other one sobers up and he says, but you don't even know what I need. You don't even know what I need. So that's the affectability, not on sentimentalism, not on fusionality, but the knowledge through this sensibility, through this affectability. What could it be that the other really needs? And that's a very practical question and very incarnated question, you see? And in this sense, it's source of knowledge. But it's a practical knowledge. And there you could link it with how to develop a virtue. But virtue will not always help you to resolve the question in the real situation. But it's there. You have to know. So in this sense, what I said yesterday, justice is source of knowledge. Being affected by the fate, by the destiny of the other, introduces me to learn to know the other. And this is also a knowledge, but it's not the knowledge of perception. I know how to cope with you, how to reduce you, how to fix you. No. It's learning through my affectability to learn the other. So in this sense, the ethical affectability is a source, a very important source of knowledge. What I called yesterday, the wisdom of love. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so once more we thank Professor Burggraeve for the lecture. May we now ask everyone to proceed with the sessions.